Bingo, bango, presto, changeo. We are live. There are currently 2 viewers. You want to do a sound check for us real quick, Chris? Gonna be smart. I muted the LinkedIn stream so I don't have to hear that feedback in the loop for everybody. Oh man, I was an idiot last week. I didn't because
Last week.
I don't know why it was last week actually. So for those that don't do this every day, which qualifies as me, obviously, the feed that I have that I'm bringing in for Chris, because he's not physically sitting here, as you can see, like we are. That feed that I'm bringing in for Chris is it's a remote feed that's got a loop through, so it has to loop through on my actual desktop audio. So anytime you're broadcasting desktop audio to a streaming setup like this, it works well.
I think it's good.
Perfect. Thank you. That's why I was trying to stall while you were doing it all. Thanks, Chris. So anytime you're doing all that kind of stuff, and like I said, this is the way this podcast always is going to work. And I haven't even done the damn intro yet. If there's something neat or unique that we can explain, that we can add value to your experiences, or if you do decide to do this in the future, I mean, I'd love to see everybody out there in the world streaming all day, every day. It'd be freaking awesome. But to add that value to you, I'm going to provide some insight. So like I said, I was an idiot because I forgot that sound repeats, Brad. And so if desktop sound is coming back through, it's kind of like one of those things, like if you're a streamer and you're game streaming, you're also game streaming your desktop audio 9 times out of 10. Because you want everyone to hear that fire in the hole Call of Duty sound, you want them to hear that as you're playing. You don't just want them to hear, oh, here's a random dude talking while he just shows us a screen share of him playing Call of Duty. Kind of weird. Tis what it is. I have rummaged my mouth a little bit too much, so
Fire in the hole is wild.
dude, you remember that sound though. I mean, it was a TikTok meme, for crying out loud, for forever and a day. Yes, why not? Actually, I'm going to use my stream deck again for once today. Get to the button. See, the buttons are all labeled. It works.
I like them.
I have a whole, I don't know who the hell the Stream Deck XL is for. I thought it would be me. I thought of all people, it would be me. And maybe if I am just that wild and crazy of a kid, I can add a whole bunch of other stuff.
My friends in broadcasting and like professional live streaming that are doing 18 different cameras and shots have all the stream decks.
Well, what's comical for your purposes, Chris, so that you can laugh at? I mean, I literally have 4 cameras sitting here. I could change between the 4. One of them has to pipe to you so that you can actually see that we're not dead. Through the Teams conversation that we have. The other one is piped to me, is just right now facing for me Chance, which is actually on the gimbal, which is nice. Then I have another gimbal cam, which if I wanted to show off my desktop and what I was doing on the desktop, I can. And another old school Oreo. So everything I have is 4K, but it is what it is. So let's start the podcast.
Sorry for being late.
All time, huh?
Yeah, dude. I mean, this is Chance. Once again, welcome
late
to the party. This is how this goes. Chance is the new guy in the room, so we're gonna always, mess with the new guy early on, make him learn how late we start and roll.
It's just a refresh. That's what it is. I've been on before.
I know, but but you know what I mean when I say it's you're still the new guy in the room, technically. Number 2.
NFG.
Yeah, always. Noobs. We're going to pronounce some noobs later.
Can't wait.
So this is Don't Call Me for IT Support 2.0. That's a Workstation Work Tech podcast. It's kind of being rebooted, obviously. This is episode 2. And episode 2 is where we're starting a series. So before we did this, and it was like a monthly, hey, we're going to talk about some things. So episode 2 is the beginning of a deep dive series. Um, Primarily because as we had a conversation with it last time, we actually had feedback. Um, but we're diving into digital twins starting today. There will be other topics that we do deep dives on. I have a feeling that we all have things we're passionate about, so we're all going to have some deep dive information that we can get into. We want that to be a clear and present danger.
Yeah, dangerous one.
Exactly, right? That's the
And
term you want to, I mean, hey, we all have subject matter expertises, but we also know that we're all jack of all trades, but master of none people kind of thing. We are, we are the guy that is, once again, we can be very dangerous when given enough time and enough ability to Google. As most technical people really are. That always cracks me up too, by the way. No, IT people, they're not really that well versed in anything. They just know how to Google it better than most. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we're jumping into the deep dive. We're having the fun. We're getting to places where we want to go. Keep typing. Add your good notes. I need this. Also, you realize words on that computer.
Oh, yeah. That's for me to read later.
I've got to make, I'm going to make, like I said, this is how comments go. So
let's do intro 2.0.
It's a finishing intro 2.0. This is it. The episode 2. This is a deep dive beginning. So
his audio didn't really come through that good.
Well, he'll have to lean in closer then.
All right. Yeah, well, I guess I got to clear and talk. And
I can make that.
Nope,
yeah.
that didn't work.
He's gone now. Say something again.
Say sometimes.
Hey.
Oh, he's there on. He's
Oh.
there on our end. He's there on our end, so we're good.
Okay.
It might just be something coming into you, basically.
Okay. Cool. No problem.
I will go ahead and say Teams' noise cancellation abilities way the heck better probably than OBS's. Matter of fact, I know they are for a fact because. Okay, let me finish the intro and then I'm going to answer that question. But this is Digital Twins. It's something I said. We had some comments, some questions, and good discussion in the last podcast. So I decided to move forward with this. So, like I said, the start of this is Digital Twins, a likeness, but digitally. And so this is the deep dive beginnings. So who are we? I'm changing it from numbers, Chris. We're saying just a couple now. Just a couple of guys with the dream of helping others better navigate the crazy world of workstations and other fun work technologies. I'm Brad Medlin. He's Chance Krasnicki. Another guy on the other side of the screen. My big dog, Chris Touchberry. I'll let you intro yourself next time, actually. That's a bad idea.
I think that's going to be better.
Yep.
We'll figure that out.
So,
still working it.
Today, we're going to start with something fun. What is a digital twin? Going to transition it over to this. I've got an image here that I can start with. And actually, if you look at the thumbnail of today's video, it's also a digital twin. In the technical sense of the term. But what is a digital twin? And I have a definition that ChatGPT gave me here that I could read off for you. I do love ChatGPT. If you ever type something in there that needs that, great to go with it. But what is a digital twin? It's a virtual model, replica of a virtual model or replica of a physical object, system, or process. Now, I'm going to modify that statement mildly. It's a virtual model or replica of a physical model, system, and process. There is no or to this situation.
Bingo.
The old school definition would have abided by that term, or. But as we continue forward and keep going down this road, the and is going to be very crucial. Because here's the thing. There's a thought process today of a digital twin that is literally a 2D drawing that is showing you a live feed of a pressure valve or of a pressure transmitter and it's just showing you that information on a screen in 2D drawing format, that is not a digital twin. That is a digital likeness, but not a twin. Because that's not telling me, well, where the heck in the facility is that pressure transmitter? And when I say a 2D drawing, I'm not talking of one of those, plan view drawing. I'm talking, it's usually like a P&ID type drawing, which is just a line, shows a little blip that pops up with a little pressure transmitter looking symbol, and then has numbers that read off in the middle of it. It's not a digital twin, folks. People want to call that a digital twin. It is not a digital twin. That is that statement there at the end of or process. That's why we have to change that or to an and. For people to really and truly be familiar. Because here's the thing, if we treat that as a digital twin, what's the good chance that it is what's the chance that someone looks at from the AI perspective these days, where you have a self-driving car, a Tesla, and it's got, their vision system, and that Tesla vision system's looking out there for us
Constantly.
right?
Consistently. Has to.
It's not looking. So what's the thing that it's looking at? If it's not a digital twin, because it's reading that live feedback data. That's the best example of a digital twin to date I can give someone. Self-driving vehicles and the way they interpret the data, because not only are they receiving spatial data, they're also receiving sensor data from the car. Wheel sensor data, braking data, acceleration data, all that happy jazz. So you're taking all that data, everything that's coming into one place, and it's actually interpreting that. So it's taking a digital twin and doing something with it. Right? So in manufacturing, you'll see digital twins that would be something like a machine that can help track the condition of what's going on, predict what might need, maintenance to minimize downtime. Usually this is done from a perspective of having the shop floor shown in three dimensions, and then driving it in to be able to do the actual, machine work sometimes, or actually see the status of things at the same time, and then fly through the actual facility and figure it out. Urban planning, once again, that's kind of the Tesla thing that I was just giving off there. Simulate, but use cases expanded where you can actually simulate traffic patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare digital twins are more used to simulate treatments for actual people. So that's where the digital twin gets fun. Because the digital twin might be a heart valve where you're going in and scanning someone's heart and figuring out how to make the valve fit to it. That's kind of the unique feature set, I think, coming in the future. So I have this article up here to talk about, and this is going to get to be, like I said, this is a deep dive from a personal knowledge perspective. And once again, rabbit holes aside, there is no aside. Rabbit holes planning to occur. This is something that will greatly increase someone's knowledge and whatnot. And I have a feeling if someone comes in and decides to make a comment on something, which I'm hoping they do, those comments and questions that we can answer the best that we can will usually lead us down in a rabbit hole to bigger and better things. So
are you watching the comments on YouTube?
I see them. Okay. I see the slickster out there.
Okay.
Chance will reply too, so I figured y'all both had it handled.
Yeah.
I will see comments that will roll in as well on LinkedIn. I'm just not going to be able to type and reply to anybody.
That's fine.
That's going to be me. If you guys do that, great. So I want to actually use something that's sitting behind me as a great example of this. We talk about twins of things. So a digital twin, and another good example about this before I get get a little deeper into the article on screen. I'm actually going to back up so we can see it. A digital twin of something like a Lego. Everybody knows what Legos are. Comically, Legos are twins. They're scaled twins, but they're twins nonetheless. Well, depending on the one you're working with. I'm not going to sit back and say the little $12 wind turbine is a great digital twin. It's probably good, but it's a scale model. Think. I mean, that's the way you can think of it in the future. Is it's a scale model digitally, but once again, when you go digitally, you don't have to scale anything. There is no scaling once you're digital, right? Once digital, everything is, for lack of a better word, once you're digital, everything is to scale. So it's real world size. So if you were to jump into a VR headset and try to walk through that world, that virtual world, it's like you're walking through the real world. That's where we kind of got. It's a great way to kind of tie it back into that kind of stuff. Um, so I bring up this article just to kind of use a great example, and it's actually several years old to make you laugh about it. This article came from 2021. So this is a buzzword that everyone talks about right now. You hear AI and digital twins probably like you never have before. Right? I feel like Chris, the guy that builds computers over here, ladies and gentlemen, chuckling over the fact that about AI and digital, like that is literally what people are into. There's some other buzzwords that float along with it, like reality capture that goes along with digital twins, things like that. But ultimately, you know, you're gonna pull this back down to it. Now, as I'm talking about this article up here, you're gonna see. So there's some, there's a lot of ways to build a digital twin. Ultimately, what you need to know is that the primary purpose of a digital twin is to help improve the decision-making process, whether that is for a self-driving car that needs to make a decision on where it's going to turn, or whether it's a bunch of human beings in a room figuring out how the heck they're going to get a giant pump out of a hole not near big enough to do that. Right? It's a unique circumstance. But it's also things that you have to realize is that you're offering the insights on the current state or potential future states of a physical system without actually physically needing to interact with it. So like there's predictive projections.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're talking about some 4D scheduling type setups, there's some predictive projections. Always a good thing. Now, how you get there, once again, is a very, very path optimized way. It could be just about any number of ways, actually. One, you could end up using just regular tapes and measures and levels and plumb bobs in the field.
Traditional.
Going out, taking a 2D drawing, converting it to 3D, and then using some updates to make that kind of thing happen. Right? That's possible. It could also be like a self-driving car using LiDAR that moves around like that. Nick asked a good question. What's a buzzword? I should have thought about that one. Darn it, Nick, you got me on this one, buddy. So it's in industry, you have certain terms that come up and are said an awful freaking lot. Somebody out there is discussing them, reaching out, having conversations, so on and so forth. In this situation, digital twins is one of them.
Absolutely.
So, with that being the case, the point that I'm kind of getting at here is that a buzzword in this situation is basically it's something that you'll hear industry professionals or you'll read a lot of articles that pop up about them. I don't know if there's a better
I
way to
mean,
word it than
articles
that.
or podcasts such as this, you know,
Yeah,
anything
podcasts that
internet, what's a internet topic, kind of thing,
you
or
might see a
exploding
bunch of
internet time.
TikToks about it, basically.
Yep.
Now, if there's a really popular dance or something like that, it's a viral.
Kind of bleeds into tags and or yeah, right,
Viral is
exactly.
probably a good example of
Viral and
that.
bleeds into tags and stuff,
Yeah.
essentially.
I am gonna make this better. To see the time to do it.
There you go.
You keep leaning into your mic, so I need to keep giving
Oh,
you
I
that
got
more
to do
mic
that.
space.
Yeah.
Bam! I like it.
Thank you.
So, yes, a buzzword. So that's your buzzword description for today. It's basically the viral industry term, something that you hear people talk about all the dang time. All right. So, but here's the cool thing, and I love this article because it also brought out some really interesting pieces of like what's driving digital twins. This was 2021, folks.
I hear you,
I
Nick.
love Nick. Thank you for that one. That's great. I feel like it should be two, buddy. It's definitely one. We'll make it happen. So what's driving the digital twin setup? Ultimately, there's probably 1,000 other pieces to this, but in 2021, they really were right. The Internet of Things kind of was what got things going. Your smart thermostats, that was like smart light bulbs. Because here's the thing, if you had, if you these days too, now a lot of people have their whole homes lit up with smart light bulbs. Well, the best they can do right now is say, hey, I have a smart light bulb in my bedroom, in the living room, in the kitchen. So what makes it a digital twin is that it's the description available to it of that situation. If they had a 3D model of their home, they could say, all right, well, these three lights here that are in the ceiling, they're also, that way too. These over here on the wall are different. You can categorize things completely differently. And without having to have description words, because I'm the first person to say, whenever I set up a new Google TV, you know how often I change it from living room TV or bedroom TV? Next to goose egg.
Right.
Nobody does it.
Right.
One time.
Yeah, you might, yeah, and so, and that's the thing. But you take that sucker from place to place to place.
Mm.
Oh man, Nick doesn't know what a smart light bulb is.
Let's show.
Do I have a smart light bulb?
Controlled through an app
I
usually.
actually don't have a smart light bulb that I know.
Maybe some voice commands, but usually an
For
app.
shame.
Right.
No, you know what the first smart light bulb was?
Yeah.
The clap on, clap off, clapper light bulb.
I hate it.
That was the
That's
first
good.
smart light bulb. It registered to sound.
Ain't no way. Yeah.
Who'd have thought the clapper would have led us to digital twins? I'm sorry, that was great. But no, so the clap on, clap off light bulb. I mean, a smart light bulb is just something that doesn't require a physical switch. It is controlled internally by some means.
I don't like the term the clapper. I feel like that's something you get treated at the urgent care.
Whether that's a program
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
an
Something.
internet
It
signal.
was the clapper. It was called the clapper, dude.
It was called the clapper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude. This was like the late 80s, early 90s.
It was.
Wow.
It was.
Yeah. No.
There's a
I
whole
missed-
thing.
No, I saw it in action, but I don't know the clapper.
But I mean, but ultimately, smart anything. I know. I saw it too. I can't help it. He is going to make this whole podcast go viral on YouTube. I have a feeling.
He's on fire.
He is lighting it up tonight. But like, control the smart devices. So that's what the Internet of Things is too. I guess, you know what? I probably should have better thought this through. I didn't think I was going to have the question and answer man over here. So the Internet of Things as well. The Internet of Things was basically when you had, like I said, smart thermostats where you can actually remotely control them. Smart light bulbs, remotely controllable. You have, home controlled devices through your phone. That is where the Internet of Things started. Now, that is on a small scale. Internet of Things actually has been taking over a lot more industrial facilities than you would think. So, for instance, rather than having to have a maintenance engineer walk the floor every night at a manufacturing facility, you've got a maintenance engineer that can be sitting at home, get a notification on his phone, and go, "Oh crap!" Call somebody up, say, "Hey, go check. Maintenance tech that's on site tonight. Go check this thing out." Don't have to pay him to sit there all night long. Don't have to have 3 separate maintenance engineers when you can just have 1 do it or 2 do it. And they're just getting fed that data and understanding how to interpret it. So the Internet of Things has changed dramatically what's been going on. It was a huge little runoff. Robotics kind of fed into that too, because robotics it's all programming, but now you could take that programming and if something happened, it could feed you information back, and you could say, "Hey, I've got this robot here that I've designed to go move things around. You know, if something happens where it gets limited or the bearing wears out in the arm, it's going to know to notify and tell you that." And to your point, Nick, I don't know that I would call it a smart device. I would call that more of a smart controller. Actually, I'd probably call that a smart pedal. My turn, but I mean, they call them all kind of different things.
All the above.
Nick's over here asking about a guitar pedal system that's actually connected up from to his computer to be able to control and change the settings so he can actually modify the sound input output, whether it's different pedal types and so on and so forth.
Probably closer to a digital workstation than anything.
Yeah,
honestly. Yeah.
But
both.
He's in the realm of thought process here.
Right.
He's following his footsteps to go down this path, which I like following with this here.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually comprehending where he's going with it and taking it the next step.
He can hook it up to a digital workstation technically, and then work from that.
I would consider it I would still consider it a smart device.
Can it be controlled through an app? That's my question.
In the sense of, no, that's what I'm saying. Not a smart. It's not a smart device in the sense that it's a smart controller.
Right.
It's only smart when it's connected.
Yeah. Essentially.
To where you can make those changes when it's connected. If you can't connect to it, then you're kind of
maybe
without a path.
That's my question. Is I don't know if you can do that through the Helix.
And he might not get that right now. That's okay.
That's yeah. I don't know that though. I can't verify that. I'll have to look at it.
Do they connect with Bluetooth?
There's a handful of them that do nowadays.
So I mean, at that point in time, if they do connect with Bluetooth, at that point it would be a smart device. Once you get down to that step, and I think that's what made things go. Once again, rabbit holes. Nick is captaining the ship right now down the rabbit hole express. But you have to think about it from that design perspective. What is an example of that?
Yeah.
So
broad definition.
What's another use case for a digital twin that I think we all probably have a fun, relatable experience to? Video games.
Essentially.
Because video games, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind or your mind or anybody's mind, video games these days are built on real world environments usually. Maybe
modern games, yes.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
These days.
Yeah.
I mean, the perfect example is always going to be to go back to like your NCAA football or your Madden or NBA 2K, whatever it is these days. Those sports games, FIFA or whatever it is, Football Manager now, that was another big one too. Because those stadiums that you play in, they're digital twins now.
Yep.
I mean, they're exactly the kind of thing that we like to replicate with that. So what was cool about this article, and I'm kind of bringing it full circle back to this, is that Omniverse is something that NVIDIA had, but these tools have been popping up since 2021. I believe now you have one from Unreal, the Unreal Engine stuff that they've got for UE5. It allows you to take the data from the real world and turn it quickly into a meshed skin that can then be applied with some physics to be turned into a game. The neat thing about this is that a lot of these programs, especially from Unreal and NVIDIA, are somewhat open source, which is not a normal NVIDIA process. I mean, we all know how CUDA was not. I mean, it's locked down to NVIDIA GPUs.
Yep.
There is no real, and man, I love the competitive edge that people talk about, but there is no real replacement for CUDA. It's, if you are in a working environment, and don't get me wrong, yes, AMD and Intel both have good GPUs right now, but that's for gaming, in my opinion. Once you bring things over to the real world, unless they specifically have a way to tune and edit the software and make it work for you, it's actually, everything works on CUDA. Your software has to be designed with a built-in plugin to work on an AMD or Intel GPU more efficiently, right? Because if you look at things like CUDA cores versus your actual raster operation units or whatnot, and stream processors, whatever you want to call it, from a what's more parallelizing? God, I can never say that word. What's making the process more parallel in processing than actual single thread, multi-threaded, if you want to call it that, is that the CUDA core has instruction sets that are running through it differently. Now, let's make that flip side in the opposite direction. You have multi-threaded processors that also have hyper-threading. So hyper-threading is like your version of CUDA. It's SMT on steroids, right? Simultaneous multi-threading.
Right.
I've got to remember who I'm talking to tonight. SMT is simultaneous multi-threading. I mean, there's for every one input, there's 4 outputs to that setup, or 2 outputs on most CPUs. But that's the differentiating statement there. With CUDA and stream processors on GPUs, this is what makes them much better for complex math equations like this. You have one input with usually like 8 to 16 or 32 outputs. And so it's actually tracking with that, feeding that extra information, breaking it down, getting out faster. So, what's some more good use cases that we talk about as we're doing this? We've been talking about some of the other real world applications. You've also got to think about the folks out there that are doing real world work. Your city planners that are trying to figure out, we've got so much traffic at this intersection. How the heck do we optimize it for the future? Right? How do we do that? That's a struggle for them and for anybody else.
You might need to get with the SCDOT on that one.
No, dude, you could SCDOT, the never-ending construction on I-85. I swear. I think I'm not even joking. I think there are there are adults actually that are graduating college that have never driven 85 without construction being on that road. Ever. I never drove the road without construction. Now, that means I was 15 in 2003, guys. So, that should tell you something. The fact that it's been going on that long, but that's one of these great tools is you want to minimize those things. You want to minimize the number of places where that becomes a problem. And it's always going to be a problem, right? But if we can minimize those locations, or they can maximize utilizing a digital twin, well, how do we shut down the least number of lanes? How do we keep the road open longer than, as long as possible, or maximize, or just add on to it without having to do X, Y, or Z to start? Great use cases there. I know, and that is one of those things. There are devices out there from companies, and I've gotten to see some of them that are really cool, where you can drive 65 miles down the road and 3D scan an entire road at the same time. Now, is it
Nifty.
hyper accurate to a DOT professional? They don't need something accurate to a 16th of an inch. They don't need something accurate to a thousandth of an inch. If that thing's accurate to a quarter of an inch, or even hell, even a half an inch, most of them would take a tenth of a foot and be happy. That's going to solve their problem. So that's a unique a unique situation that's going on. And that gets us right back to what we were talking at the beginning about with autonomous vehicles. Being able for them to read that data in. If an autonomous vehicle no longer has to do all the 3D scanning and can move from a LiDAR-based system, like Tesla's trying to do, to a vision-based, guess what? You're simplifying the process. You're making it easier and less expensive by being able to use lower end hardware, because vision systems don't require as much hardware and processing as LiDAR solutions do. They're measuring things with vision rather than with LiDAR. And that's a good thing. It's a great thing in the way we operate the world. It's a crazy feat when you come to think about the way a digital twin has truly changed what's going on in the real world.
Very true.
Right? Things have never been easy to interpret. But as you continue to say, and here's the big thing associated with it, as you continue to save time and effort and inference ability, you can reduce the amount of times you go out and do something in the field, period. As you continue down that path, that's the simple, solution to what a digital twin is. And that likeness that it's generating, once again, it's taking the data, bringing it in, creating it, and turning it into something. Now, I will make the statement quick, because it's fun as we're kind of getting to the end of the longer version of this part of the podcast. It's a likeness that you need to have. The next side phase of things, we'll actually dig in and see some of the technologies and tools, but it's usually things that are thought up of in 4 stages. And I'm going to start it with this. I just, again, give you this as the final input for this. Go talk about some other news and stuff like that's going on in the real world. It's kind of unique, but final 4 big points to this to remember. 1, you have to have the real world physically captured. This isn't something where you can say, hey, I've built a model of what my design's going to be, and not verify that model. You have to verify the model. If you don't verify the model, it's worthless. 2, you have to have that means that if you're verifying it somehow, you got to have the model. So this can't just be some 2D drawing on a screen. It's got to have 3 dimensions tied to it. Piece that follows up after that is you have to follow it up too. So this may be something where it's not just a stage by stage done. If you're following this from a construction perspective, it has to have all phases. So if you can get behind the walls, you get behind the walls. When you just got, your stick build up and you just have 2x4s in the way, you got to have that in what's in the wall. All right. And lastly, time is a factor here. So everyone thinks about things in 3 dimensions. 3 dimensions would be X, Y, and Z. The 4th dimension that everybody has to add to this is always going to be time. Now you can add things like, cost for a 5th dimension, all that other happy jazz to it if you want to. resource loading to make a sixth, however you want to look at it. But that's not ultimately, you got to go through the fourth dimension. You got to go from an X, a Y, a Z, and then add your timepiece in. If you do those four things, you will have a viable digital twin. Meet the sensor data to go with it. That gets you another piece to it as well. Great. But the big four, that's where you got to start. That's going to give you your likeness. Whether you want to call it scaled, whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, that's going to give you your likeness. And that's your ultimate goal. Like I said, those are the big four things that in individual use cases we're going to dig into in the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk more and more about the, how do you get that data from reality? How do you capture that data in reality, which is where that next buzzword, reality capture, comes into.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
You know what? Somebody just said surveying is not the hold up with DOT. I never said it was. I
agree with it.
I see them out there all the time, but I'm not saying surveying should
I
not
agree with
be.
that
Should
too.
never. If surveying is the DOT holdup, boy, we got big problems.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is always planning that's associated with what's going on.
Probably budget holdups, amongst other things too.
Budget holds probably get in there too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
release when you release funds, so on and
I
so
don't claim to
forth.
know anything about it, but that's fine.
I mean,
That's my 2 cents.
having had conversations with the construction industry, that's how it is.
It always gets back to the budget, right?
It always gets back to the NIL deal.
Something about it.
Something like that. But yes, that's a good point. Surveying, and I don't think if I inferred that surveying was the holdup, I should apologize for that. I don't think it's what I was getting at more is that technology is enhancing that. So keep that in mind, build off it, move from it, and utilize that technology better. Because also I would have to say, 20 years ago when surveying was not really used as much as it probably could have been. No. Utility relocations. Yeah. You know what? You're making good points. I can appreciate that statement.
Absolutely.
I can absolutely appreciate that statement. I don't think I've ever thought of it from that perspective, but yeah.
Locates.
I would say permitting is always usually a holdup too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's not just for DOT. That's for construction in general. But like I said, the big four are going to be the things that we're gonna kind of cover. We're gonna cover how reality capture's changed, where it's at, what it's doing, how it can benefit. Whether talk about LiDAR photogrammetry. We're gonna talk about terrestrial-based scanning to a little bit of a degree. We're gonna dig into the modeling aspect of things. How accurate? What are some different differentiating cases there? We're gonna talk about the actual as-builting or constructability of things, tracking it as you build, and more importantly, in number 4, we're gonna talk about that time piece. How does time really affect us? If I can find somebody that can talk about sensor data, that wants to talk about sensor data, we're gonna talk about sensor data at some point. But that's a later point. The biggest thing we got to talk about, though, from a news perspective, as we shift gears a little bit, and yes, this isn't in the rundown, but I got to thinking about it earlier. There is an article, and I'm going to see if I can find it real fast. There it is. Got it. This one's a fun one. We kind of talked about it the other day.
Mm-hmm.
But
we did.
it's a bigger order now than I think people have noticed. I think Chris, you and I last year talked about this.
Probably.
Supply chain, supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. Breaking away from the TSMC hold on things is going to be crucial.
Mhm.
If 18A proves to be as good as it sounds right now, Nvidia won't be the only one to make the jump. And
Nope.
I'll be the first to say I think the last one to make that jump that would, if they decided to, if 18A and then 14A, the next gen after that, are both as good as they say they are. If 18A runs smoothly, by 14A you might see the biggest producer of Apple chips shift from TSMC to Intel. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
And Nick hits with the hard quotes over here today. How about it? That ain't
With the
bad.
hard facts.
That's a quotable quote. That's like them potent potables.
Quotable quote.
Gotta have the
Your
quotable quotes
quotable.
and the potent potables.
You saying quotable quote is the quotable quote.
There you go. No, I'm trying hard here, but having it talks about Nvidia or Broadcom. I don't look at things from a financial services perspective, from a stock perspective. At some point in time in the near future, that guy's probably going to talk about it a little bit more
I think I can. Yeah.
from a financial, where the industry might see that benefit and how it might affect 401ks and options tradings and all that stuff. And at some point in time, you got to go into options trading and just explaining it in a little more depth. We got to have a little.
That might be.
Options
Yeah,
trading
might be
and how that
different
works.
podcast for a different time.
No, it's for like I'm just saying I'm not saying a deep dive. I'm saying a segment to just explain what it is, because there's a lot of people out there that could use that knowledge. But this piece of information,
I'll read my disclaimer later.
yeah, you can read that. Yeah, you are not a no one here's a financial advisor. No one here's a financial advisor, but understanding what it means could help some folks understand a little better.
Absolutely.
And the technology too, but the technology behind it, man. Just think about it to your perspective here. Like 10 years ago, options trading, there wasn't a single individual that could do that really, unless you had just endless capital to jump into the game. Now anybody can really do it because there's technology that allows it, right? That's where the change is. And that's where, like I said, this podcast and the way I look at things is going to open up doors to have conversations with folks. Give them more of a perspective of how is it possible to do options trading now versus 10 years ago when
there was a lot of innovation when it came to that kind of idea that we could open it up as a not just from a business perspective,
Yeah.
or like a Wall Street industry, but open it up to everybody as a whole, especially with apps and anything in the app store. How many actual individual brokerages you can open up with anybody now. It was a lot of innovation involved, and I think we'll have to dive deeper into that once
like
it's all said and done.
Topic for another day.
Absolutely.
Definitely and like I said, fun segment plan into something. But like I said, using that use case and that point and that discussion point to roll around that, like is I bring that and tie that into this from the perspective of when you see little pieces of tidbits that float out like this, that's going to be a change. We aren't sponsored by anybody. Lord knows that. When that happens, I'll be a huge proponent of it and love sharing the wealth with everybody. But I do want to point out a unique piece of this, that there's so many things that are happening right now. I'm kind of wanting to get one just to play with it. One of the new Samsung 91, which also the name, the 9100 Pro, that hurt me a little bit. I was like, man, they had the 990 and they couldn't just call it the 1000. Go up by 10 again. Just call it the 1000 instead of the 9100.
Short-sighted, maybe. I don't know.
We can discuss naming conventions all day, every day if we have to, but that's it. But you guys get that now. That's something that I want to see. A test case on, because I mean I know those things are gonna. Also, finally, they're getting an 8 terabyte stick drive. That's gonna be great. I mean, dude, but things are where this whole podcast goes into depth in the future. We can get down to, but it's always going to be. There's so much change to this industry, to technology, to workstations, to how we do work. Like I said, that's like the point, the application. That's the point of what I was saying with you is the applications that are available to be able to do these things, the software that's out there for tracking and trending things. There's so much that's going into this, and AI is starting to build into it. Chat GPT, if you don't use it, wow, man. Yeah, Nick, the uncomplication of things is always going to help people. I tell you though, the unique Blackwell boards, I'm still sitting here going, and I'm beating myself over that conversation we had last on Saturday, Chris. That whole percentage discussion we had looking at the new GPUs kind of cracked me up, because new Blackwell GPUs are only gonna flip that. Oh my God.
Stay on topic.
That's a hey. That's a topic. That's
Roll back.
Yeah, we got to. Yeah, I know.
Let's cast a line here for a second here, ladies and gentlemen, because tax day is coming up.
Yeah, well, true.
If you haven't done your taxes, do them.
Tax day is
Uh-oh.
already come and gone for me.
Tax day is technically the April 15th.
Not if you're an S corp.
Well, yeah, you have to do quarterly though. But tax day in general for income tax day is April 15th.
Mm.
Let's take a moment of silence for everyone out here that's getting ready to hurt themselves over the fact that tax day is coming up.
Well,
gosh, and I don't mean hurt yourselves physically. I mean just how rough it is, guys. Taxes suck. If there's only two things guaranteed in life, it's death and taxes. That is yeah. No, I'm telling you that the way tax codes are written, simplifying that alone would help. Gosh, Moses, we could sit here and discuss taxes and the tax code and how bad it is for probably.
That's why I said reel it in.
Yeah, cash that line out, put a bobber on it, and just wait. No one will ever like that and enjoy that perspective as much as some folks in the IRS. It's a unique process that we talk about. I hate it. I wish it never was a thing. So had that little fun piece. I want to look at this real quick just to validate myself on one other thing. Oh, we did get a launch of the Switch 2. Or an announcement of it, I should say.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to go into too much depth on it, but I will go into this. $80 games are finally here. If I never thought I would see this day, but $80 games are here. Right?
What a shame.
It makes you a little sad.
I don't know. Well, okay, so what? Back in the 80s and 90s, they actually did have higher price games, but I think we created a standard after a while.
What?
Well, that's true. Standardization of things kind of came down. I think that
mass production and all that.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, things will always change. There'll always be some floating to it, especially just cost and perspective to it. I'll use another great one though, as we're looking at it. But the neat thing to me is, once again, ray tracing is another one of your buzzwords. Ray tracing. I tell you, man, and all that stuff's done on AI based hardware. If you can't get your mind baffled over something, that one blows my mind to this day. Hey. Enterprise machines can now get updates and no reboot is required. That's intriguing.
What?
That's a new one. Microsoft has officially released a hot patch for Windows 11 Enterprise builds. Now you don't have to reboot your Windows PC after you do a Windows update.
But it's gonna be enterprise. What does enterprise cost? I don't know.
No. They already have. Nah,
This
that
has come
technically
with
has
Enterprise.
come to Windows 11 in general, but now
Oh,
Enterprise has it as well.
oh, I get it.
It's a hot patching thing. It's not perfect. It's great. And by the way, if you want to know what Windows 11 Enterprise is, technically it's Windows 3, Windows 365 Enterprise. Um, Basically they ship your E5, your E3, your F3. So if you don't know what those are, they're just versions of Office 365 that carry a little bit of a steeper price value. Um, but they add an actual Windows license to the software. I own an actual E5 license, so I know what it is. Um, but yeah, that's just something unique to get if you haven't wondered about it. That's cool though.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also telling you that there will be some that still require it, but it's trying to give hot patches and hot fixes that don't force a read. Because how many of us have been sitting there working on a project, went to go home, came back, and a computer had restarted, and we're like, son of a gun, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Especially dealing with what I do sometimes on a regular basis. I could leave a computer and have it be running for days at a time just to finish doing something and come back and have it had rebooted in the middle of that job. Oh, I used to get so mad.
I
We
think
we
your
used to disable Windows updates for that reason.
Mhm. I think your workstation rebooted on me one time during like a zombies game. It was
Ah,
30 something rounds in, going on 40.
I'm not surprised. I mean,
Yeah,
because
it was
there's
bad.
auto updates, and
Mhm.
if it happens at if you're doing something at midnight, guess what? It's gonna auto reboot.
That was a rough one.
And that's a unique one too. It's a unique circumstance that we don't really see very often. But it is, like I said, if half the updates you get now no longer require a reboot,
That'd be nice.
that's pretty.
Pretty
Nice.
solid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it will entice more people to just leave it on, leave Windows updates on rather than turning it off or pausing it so often.
Mhm. To make for a more safe.
More secure environment.
Yep.
Yeah,
Which I mean, yeah, that's the other thing. If you,
it'll
yeah,
probably come to Apple, I would think,
I don't know.
at some point.
I don't know. Apple is very peculiar. But
That's a word.
at least Apple does
Sure
require you
is.
to accept the update first.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of a it's not going to do it to you unless you say go kind of thing.
Mm,
I mean, call a spade a spade. Apple has solid hardware. I will say this. Another thing I'm looking at too is because I'm really interested. And I don't know about you. I've always said this about the split, the Windows Apple split. So if all you're doing is basic generalized computing, writing emails, some coding too, especially, but also, Word documents, things like that, an Apple computer 10 times out of 10 is going to be better.
Hmm.
You know, it's not, a Mac Mini or something like that's going to really probably be just as good, if not better, than a Windows PC for your basic functionality, and it's probably going to stay more relevant longer too. So you've got to enjoy that piece. Now we kind of flip that target just a wee bit, and once you get into more specialized software, you'll find the same thing that I found over the years. Like, and I'll be the first person to say, I am probably the unique person here in that I don't like Apple computers normally for anything, but I have an iPad Pro, I have an iPhone 16 Pro Max, and I am in the Apple ecosystem for anything else. I have an original Apple Watch Ultra. But I say all that to say it like this, and to reference it like this, in that Apple has this unique way of their ecosystem being very unified, and it operating better in that sense. Which is why at some point in time I'm probably going to get like a Mac Mini or something like that to play around with, and maybe you'll report back on how it works on day-to-day tasks. It's not something that you'll ever see me use to do actual work with, but day-to-day tasks, outside of playing games, because that's the other thing that they haven't quite. They're getting better, but I don't think you're going to see Call of Duty running on a Mac anytime soon, unless you're streaming it, which you can do. But that also means you still got to have another computer to do it in the first place. But their efficiency pickups, that was always, and that's always going to be an Apple thing. Apple's always going to be into the streaming capabilities of cutting your performance per watt. That's the term they always use. Trying to get that number, sorry, that name, sorry. They always focused on performance per watt. It's why they left PowerPC and went to Intel. It's why they left Intel and went to ARM, or Apple design processors, right? They want performance per watt. If they can find performance per watt, that's what they're going to do. So we made it to an hour, which I was expecting. We're going to wrap it up here shortly. But in the finality of things, once again, you now have got you got the three of us here. We're all finally in and all. And once again, it's nice to see LinkedIn providing comments. I'm going to continue to appreciate that. I'm going to continue to say it the same way I say
That is nifty. Yeah.
anything else. Yeah, I mean, we've got YouTube that works well. Always going to like YouTube for streaming. But form and functionality, back to the ultimate statement here. So this has been the episode that we started with digital twins. We kind of gave ourselves a little deep dive to get into it, to understand what was a digital twin. And there will be follow-ups to this where we go into the phases and stages of it. The big 4 topics, like I said. As we get through those 4 topics, well, obviously we're always going to try to catch a news article or two just to cover some things like that. There is some excited feelings coming out. The Switch 2 has been announced. I'm sorry, there is a new Mario Kart.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, because that $80 game is what I was going to say. That $80 game I was referencing was Mario Kart. So as much as I'm hurt by that, I'm gonna buy it.
I didn't know it was $80. Ow.
$79.99 for a Mario Kart World.
Oh, it is open world.
Yep. Which will be unique, I think. I mean, can you imagine a GTA style Mario Kart? Throwing shells at people instead of shooting bullets.
I'm gonna play the mess out of that.
Oh, I think it'll be fun. I'm sure it'll be interesting to get an idea and see. I mean, it won't be built on a world from a digital twin. It'll be some kind of created world, but that's always the fun piece too. But yeah, so we reference things that way. We've gotten down the fun path. Don't know when the next episode tied to this will be. However, probably sometime next week you'll see us again. Later in the week, looking at targeting for a little more news if it's popular enough yet. If not, maybe we'll have a different topic for you. But look to hear more, look to see more. I'll start by saying this. I'm Brad Medlin.
I'm
Chris
Chance Krasnicki. I'm Chance Krasnicki.
We are not your typical IT guys.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to practice that one. Maybe we just record that little piece and snip it in at the end every time. I'm kidding.
Ooh.
I am not that lame. I'm not gonna just snip in a little piece on people. But we appreciate everybody that's been here. We appreciate all the comments, all the fun folks. We are going to look into some other streaming platforms here in the near future too. Might see us on Instagram, might see us on Twitch. Appreciate everything that everybody's doing. Have a great one.